Good morning. Another episode of an interesting person talking about an interesting issue. I've got an interesting person showing off Judge Willie Allen, Attorney Willie Allen, community activist Willie Allen. I have got to know him several years ago and found him to be an interesting person because of his legal career, his legal achievement, and what he does on the bench, but also in the courtroom, but also in the community. I like to talk about people who are unsung heroes, and I think some of the greatest people in our community, you never hear about them because they're not flashy, they're not very known, and they don't try to make themselves be known. But what he does as a judge, what he does as a lawyer, what he does as a community activist, he is a family man, he is married, he has children here in Tupelo, Mississippi, in the school district. And Judge Allen has so many achievements. He's done so much for our community. Aaron Washington and I have decided to go sit in his courtroom to kind of look at his judicial temperament, how he rules and how he executes his duties as a judge from the bench. And we found him to be a very compassionate judge and a very compassionate, understanding judge that tries to mete out justice in a fair and equitable way. I'm glad to have him here with me today. We're going to be talking about a range of issues, but Judge Willie Allen is the interesting person. Attorney Willie Allen, Mr. Willie Allen, I'm going to give him an opportunity to introduce himself, tell us a little bit about himself, and then we're going to get into our discussion.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say thanks for the invite here. Consider it an honor to come in and talk to you.
Yeah.
I've been knowing you for a while now, and so I'm glad to be here. But as you stated, my name is Willie Allen. I'm born and raised right here in Tupelo. I'm a project born in the projects here off Green Street here. And
So you grew up in the projects?
well, I didn't grow up. I was my upbringing started there in the projects. So I was born. When I was born, that's where we resided in the projects, and it probably stayed in the projects until I was approximately maybe 4 or 5 years old.
Right.
And then we moved to Hillsdale.
Hillsdale, yeah.
Hillsdale Apartments, and we stayed over there maybe for about 2 years, and then I finished my upbringing in Haven Acres. However, during that time frame, though, I was always in the projects because my grandparents stayed there in the projects. And so we had a lot of friends and family members who still live in the project. So we was there pretty much my whole childhood.
So you didn't grow up in privilege?
No, I didn't grow up in privilege.
You grew up more in poverty and then you were privileged.
Yeah, very far from privilege.
Yeah, yeah.
Very far from privilege. Probably grew up just about like 90% of the people here.
Right.
We was poor. We didn't want for food. We pretty much had food, but we didn't have any. You weren't gonna ever see me with a pair of Jordans on, things of that nature. For that most part, probably sometimes Nike shoes, just regular Nike. It was a time we got older where we could get those things, but for the most part, we wasn't rich. We would check people. My parents were working hard and things of that nature.
But you did grow up in a 2-parent home.
Did grow up in a 2-parent home.
Yeah.
So I did grow up in a 2-parent home.
Yes, yeah. And they were probably a very structured environment, very strict, promote education, go to school, and all that kind of thing.
Well, my dad was, I won't say hard man.
Yeah.
And everything else. And anybody know my dad right now, they'll probably say, "Oh, he's a easy get along guy." But
yeah.
That's not how he was when we were growing up.
Right.
He was tight on us, but once we grew up, became adults, he, now you could have fun with him.
Right.
But we couldn't have fun with him like that when we was growing up. He was very somewhat strict and things of that nature. And but I believe that everything that me and my brothers have become, a lot of it is contributed to him and how he was. And we didn't understand some of the stuff he did when we was younger, and didn't agree with how hard he was and at times. But we understand it now.
Yeah.
But then, oh man, we was like, Dad is out of this world. But Dad was right.
Yeah, because now I met 2 of your brothers, and they're doing very well.
Yes.
One in Texas and one Kurt here in Tupelo.
Yes, I got my youngest brother Jerry. He's former military. I think while in the military, he got his bachelor's, got his master's. He retired from military, went on to county U.S. Marshal there in Texas.
Yeah.
And now he's with ICE.
Gotcha.
Now in Texas. So he's doing well for himself, him and his family, and residing there in El Paso.
Yeah, yeah. And then you got your sisters that are doing well. Charlotte, she works for you.
Yeah, Charlotte
works with you.
She works with me, and
yeah.
I have my other sister who, Daphne. She's married. She's lives in Memphis, and my other sister Kim, who lives in Texas.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, she lives in Texas as well.
So your parents were able to raise, what is that, 6 children?
Well, it's actually to keep everything on par. I actually have biological brothers and sisters. I have it's myself, my younger brother Jerry, my older brother Robert or Kurt,
yeah,
and my sister Daphne.
Yeah.
Now Kim and Charlotte, they're not my they're actually my first cousins, but we grew up like brothers and sisters.
Gotcha.
We pretty much lived together in our upbringing the whole life, and their parents were my parents. So
gotcha.
I tell people I had 3 moms growing up.
Yeah.
I had my mom and I had my mom 2 sisters.
Gotcha.
So we grew up like brothers and sisters, and so we called each other brothers and sisters, but we're actually first cousins.
Gotcha.
But people who know us, they thought we was brothers and sisters, and because we were that close.
Well, yeah, because y'all are really close.
Yes, really close.
And family, and now you're married, and all that. You're married now.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
My wife Rashida.
Yes. Yeah, gotcha. Let's talk about because I know you in the Hall of Fame at Tupelo High School, outstanding football player.
Yes.
And let's talk about that. Growing up in Tupelo, growing up in that kind of environment with a father and a mother, and they kind of guiding y'all through that process, going through high school. Tell me a little bit about your growing up years.
Well, we've always participated in sports, me and my brothers. So that was the main thing. We had fun doing that, and back when I was growing up, that's what pretty much all the young men did.
That's how we did.
Yeah, we played sports. If we wasn't playing it at school, it was going to be playing it in the backyard.
Yeah.
Or racing in the streets. It's going to be something athletic that we was going to be involved in, and we carried that all the way through high school.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, I was able to use those abilities to obtain an athletic scholarship, and that's how I funded my college education.
Gotcha.
My undergraduate
Gotcha.
education through a college scholarship. So,
and you won on one of the only state championships that they've ever won.
Well,
in a while.
Well, actually, that team right there, we wasn't a part of that team. We actually went to the state championship 2 years in a row and lost.
You went 2 years in a row and lost?
Yes, we went back to back. I think the first year we played Meridian.
Yeah.
And we lost in the championship game. Then the second year we played Moss Point and lost in the championship game. Then I graduated. Then the year I graduated, they win. So I don't know if that's, but what we like to say, we built that.
Y'all built that team.
We built that team. So
yeah.
That team was pretty stacked. Our team was pretty stacked too as well. A lot of great athletes that came off of that team. But unfortunately, we was unable to win my 2 years that we went, but they did go 3 years in a row and win it the third year.
So where'd you go to college?
I went to college at Delta State University.
Just on scholarship?
Yes, on football scholarship. Played there from 92 to 96.
So you played? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you determine you want to be a lawyer? Did you go into Delta State knowing you wanted to be in law?
Well, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer ever since I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old.
Really?
Yes, I did. I always known. My family knew. Everybody knew. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I grew up with my parents watching Perry Mason and Matlock.
Okay.
So watching enough of it, and for some reason I became attracted to that profession. I saw that those are individuals that people went to when they needed help.
Yeah.
And it seemed to be that nobody messed with them.
Right.
They was able, I guess, from my understanding how I took it, they was able to take care of themselves and take care of others. So from that inspired me to want to become an attorney. Now I always wanted to be one.
Yeah.
Now, thing is that even though I wanted to be one, I never really, I'm being honest with you, actually believed that that was going to actually occur.
Yeah.
You know, when you come from a background such as I, and poor and poverty, and you don't see a lot of, you're not around a successful environment. When I mean by successful, I mean a lot of individuals who have, you don't know doctors other than the doctors that you go to see. You don't know lawyers unless you are in some type of trouble. So you don't get to see a bunch of the professional world. So everybody who I came in contact with were all people like me, poor.
Yeah.
So when you come from that background, you may have goals and you may have dreams, but actually whether you believe that those things are going to actually occur, probably not. And I can to be honest, even though I talked a lot about becoming one, I can't say I actually believe that it was going to actually occur. I still recall being in, when I got accepted to law school, being just totally shocked.
Yeah.
And I remember being the first day in the classroom, I'm waiting every day for someone to go pull me out because I'm like, I don't belong in here.
Yeah.
How am I here? This little guy from the projects and the acres, he's up in here in law school. So it took a while for that to settle in that, I'm there, for to actually register in my head that I am there. But I'll be last to say that, I knew I was, but I could say I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But did I actually believe that was going to happen?
And I think that's God opening doors we can't open, seeing where we can't see, to do what we can't do. So tell me about, who were the lawyers you saw growing up black that inspired you in the area?
I didn't know any lawyers.
You didn't know any black lawyers?
I didn't know any black lawyers growing up at all.
Really?
None.
So there was Kenneth Mayfield, I know, wasn't it?
I'm pretty sure he was here, but at that point in time, I didn't
know
I wasn't in that environment. Didn't have anybody who was in that environment, so I didn't know any. I had never met a lawyer other than I think the first lawyer that I actually met was I believe it was I won't say the first. One of my friends in high school, John Shelton. God bless him, he's passed away. But his father, Jimmy Doug Shelton, was a lawyer. So I had met him before because he would come to athletic events.
Right.
But I met him before. But outside of that, that would be the only lawyer that I had met just personally. When I believe it was my junior or senior year in high school, I think it's my junior year in high school, we had a mock, not a mock, but a law club that they created. And I joined that, and I think I had the opportunity to see a lawyer then.
Yeah.
But that was only one time.
Yeah.
That I saw a lawyer. Outside of that, I had never met a lawyer before in my life, and had very few contacts other than really no contacts. And I think I may have been around the late Jimmy Doug Shelton maybe twice.
Yeah.
And then I think with the law club thing, I met those lawyers one time. So outside of that, I had never seen a lawyer in person to my knowledge that I can recall in my life.
Because I know you went into law school when, wasn't a lot of blacks. And, and I know all the odds were stacked against you in that kind of environment. This guy coming from the project, really not having a lot of exposure, being around a lot of lawyers and coming from this pedigree of lawyers and going into law school. How was that experience, man? Because it wasn't like it is now. You black and you go into this environment. Tell me a little bit about that, going into class. Were you the only black in your class when you went?
No, I think it was, I wasn't only black in my class. We had a few blacks there. Maybe, I want to say maybe eight.
Eight? That's a lot.
And it was probably more than that at school, but just you pretty much that first year you stay with your group that you're with, and I think in my group it was maybe eight. I may be wrong, but somewhere around there, approximately about eight individuals who was in our law class that stayed with us that first year. But at the school total, you had more than that, but compared to opposite race right there. You know, I mean, other races. You know, we was definitely a very small minority of the school or classroom environment.
Yeah. But you eventually went to Delta State. Is that where you got your law degree from Delta?
No, I got my law degree from Mississippi College. I got my undergraduate degree from Delta State University.
Gotcha. Mississippi College. And you've been practicing law for almost 20 years.
Yes, I graduated law school in 2005 and got accepted to pass the bar that year. And I've been practicing.
The first time?
Yes, well, I couldn't afford to take it once, so, you know.
So it was out of necessity that you passed it that first time.
There was no choice about that, only one time.
Yeah.
I only had money for once, and I had enough money for that one. So, but other than that, no, I mean, couldn't take it but one time.
Yeah.
So I had to get it right the first time.
And you specialize in what area?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily consider special. I'm pretty much a jack of all trades. I do a little bit of everything. I have what I call a general practice.
Yes.
And I got some things that I don't do.
Yeah.
But mainly my areas of practice would be criminal law, of course. I do a lot of family law. I do a lot of personal injuries.
Yeah.
I do a lot of breach of contract cases and things of that nature. So my area of expertise kind of broadens out. I cover a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And I don't do bankruptcies. Excuse me. I don't do loan closings. But outside of that, anything that you can litigate on, I'm one of those individuals who will possibly be in court on that.
And I heard about you before then that you were a hell of a litigator. Once you get in the courtroom and you get them in, you lock them in. Now, I've always heard that about you. And then you shared a couple of cases, but that's where you're good at, and being able to really defend and know the law, because you know that's I know that's critically important, because you very rarely let your emotions get involved. It's all about the law. You know what I've been able to see. So tell me something about then you serving as a lawyer. Then you get appointed as a judge, or is it an elected position?
No, it's an appointed position. I got appointed in 2013 by former Mayor Jason Shelton.
Gotcha.
And he appointed me to that position, and I'm very thankful for him. It actually made me to be the first Black African American judge in the city of Tupelo.
And people don't even know you're the first Black.
Yeah,
right.
I am, and that's an honor to be in that position, and I've been in that position ever since.
Yeah. And tell me about serving as a judge. How is it different from being a lawyer?
Well, it's very different. You know, sometimes as as a lawyer, you're definitely advocating for your client.
Right.
And you're doing that, so you're basically one-sided. You know, I'm for my client and my client only.
Right.
But I like to call the judge position is like a umpire in a baseball game. You just call balls and strikes. You're not on anybody's team.
Right.
You listen to both sides, and you just call if this is baseball, you just try your best to call as fair a game as you can.
Yeah.
Within the confines of the law, and that's what I try to do on a daily basis when I'm on the bench. Yeah,
because we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we get into the conversation, because I want to talk about your judicial temperament and how you really do and weigh on some of those decisions that have long-term and life-changing effects on people. But I also want to talk about your community activism. People don't know that you don't only practice law and serve on the bench, but you do a lot of workshops, and you have a lot of other things that you've done and that you're doing in the community. Talk a little bit about that, because one of the workshops I went to when you had it at the library, that was probably one of the most informative workshops that I've had to know a little bit about the law. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, it is. I had a name for it, and I can't think of the name.
Yeah, because I can't remember what it was.
And but basically, and it's something. I think my next one is next month. It's going to be the first Monday in April.
Gotcha.
And most of them are going to be the first Monday in April of each month. So we already got that roster set up. But basically, what I do is I have a little workshop. Well, we'll call it a workshop.
Yeah.
Where at the library where I give people information about certain aspects of the law. So I may pick 1, 2, maybe 3 topics, and I speak about those. And these are going to be things that I think that people either don't know or take for granted or assume that that it's not important, and I bring the importance of just knowing these aspects of the law. There's a lot of things about the law. Everything about the law is important. Right?
Yeah.
And what I like to tell people, there's nothing that you can bring up that the law is not involved in some aspect.
Yeah.
Some aspect, even the clothes you wear, there's some laws for what type of material it has to be.
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
Yeah.
The food everything involves a law in some aspect or another. So, but what I try to bring up is bring them some knowledge or inform them about things that I deem that's important that they should know, or things that they want to know but they just don't have enough information about. So I do that, and then I have a question and answer session at the end. So it's a great tool. Want to get more people involved in that right there, because I think that the community can benefit of the law. It's a free clinic, free thing. So it's just the goal is to bring as much information and knowledge of the law to people as possible, so they can have a better understanding. But one of the things that I basically learned from being an attorney, and more importantly from just being on the bench as a judge, is you see individuals who come in the courtroom, and a lot of people think that, well, this is just unfair, or this is wrong, or they mistreated me in this manner, and they feel that way because they don't know the law.
Right.
So, but you have the opportunity to explain it to them. It may not be that this judge is against you. It's just this is what this law says as it relates to this situation. So once you read that law to them and tell them how, then they have understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I see. It wasn't that the law was against me or the judge was against me. The law was just a law. Yeah. There's some things about the law that I agree with. There's some things about the law I totally disagree with. Yeah. But it doesn't matter whether I agree or disagree as a judge. It matters whether or not that is the law. Yeah. So if it is a law, it's just a law, whether I like it or not. And for people who don't like it, then there's some avenues that you can take by getting with your representative and see if you can have those laws changed. But I, as a judge, can't change them. Yeah. I have to follow that law, whether it works for you or against you. That's pretty much the way that goes. So having an opportunity to give them information as it relates to certain things in the law that may affect them. These are things you don't know about that you may question why they charging me with this, or why did I get found guilty on this? This is why. And so just reading that to them and bringing that out is very helpful.
And I think that's important because so much of what we know now is based on what we see on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and we got so many court shows now and so many reality shows now. People get a misunderstanding or a diluted perception of what the law is based on what some of these bloggers and people are saying. And these clinics are going to be an opportunity for people to hear from a lawyer and a judge. But not only that, you work for the Secretary of State as an election commission, right?
Well, I used to, when I finished law school, before I went into private practice, I served as director of elections and senior attorney for the Mississippi Secretary of State's office for the election division. So I did that job from 2000. I actually interned in law school there for a year. And after I finished, they graduated, they actually offered me a job. So I worked there from 2005 until 2008. Okay. And had a wonderful experience working there too. Yeah. So that was I guess I wouldn't say my opening for politics, but it brought a lot of understanding about how the laws and politics kind of mesh together. Yeah. Because that's the election division. You also dealt with campaign financing and election qualifying and lobbyists, things of that nature. So all of that came within that purview. So I learned a lot and got to see how all of that kind of played its hand.
That's a lot of lived and learned and work experience to be a practicing lawyer, sitting judge, and you had prior experience in working with the Secretary of State Election Commission. That's a hell of a lot of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and that's what I mean when you say sometimes within the Black community we don't understand greatness when we have it among us, and we don't appreciate it. And sometimes the people that we profile are not the people that are really making the biggest difference. What you do makes a difference, not only from defending people in the courtroom, sitting on the bench, but you have a wealth of knowledge and influence. And I think sometimes we look over those kind of people because you're not flashy at all. I don't think I've ever seen a commercial, campaign sign, you promoting your business. Everything that you get coming through your office is through word of mouth. And tell me a little bit about that how you are able to practice business and build a successful business without doing any advertisement, because I don't think I've ever seen any advertisement.
No, I don't do the advertisement at all. And I believe that the best advertisement is just word of mouth. And I think that if you go and represent as an attorney, represent people well, they'll talk about you.
Yeah.
And being in the courtroom, people see you. They have the opportunity to see how you are as an attorney.
Yeah.
Even people that you're not representing, people they're in the courtroom, watching you do a case, and they see you. And so my business has come directly from my clients or from people who have observed me, how I handle myself in the courtroom. And blessings for me that they communicated that to others, which has allowed me to have a continued client base.
Yeah.
So it's very important.
So let's talk a little bit about, the law, because, being a judge and an attorney, what is it that you think people need to know the most when it comes to when they have an interaction with law enforcement, or let's talk about law enforcement, when it comes to having an interaction or encounter with law enforcement, what's the most important thing people need to know, a person needs to know?
The first thing is, I would tell people, keep your composure, be respectful. It is, not all officers are good, but not all of them are bad either.
Right.
So we got to keep that in mind.
Keep your composure.
Yeah, keep your composure and be respectful.
Be respectful.
Yeah, be respectful. That is very, very important. And that doesn't mean that the officer shouldn't keep his composure.
Yeah.
The same thing that I would say for the individual is the same thing that I would say to the officer.
Yeah.
Both of them need to keep their composures, and both of them need to be respectful to one another.
Gotcha.
So it's just very important. It just makes things, it keeps things from escalating.
Yeah.
Now I put the burden myself on the officer, having a duty to de-escalate,
right,
more than anything, because I like to bring common sense into things. And that's what I mean by that common sense is that most people who feel that they are being mistreated or stopped for the wrong reason, they may have some type of
attitude, right?
And things of that nature. And so, and I get that. That's just human nature that comes with it. So, and I hope that the officers understand that hey, look, you got to understand that this individual may be questioning why you stopped her. They may think you're picking at them or poking at them. So try to de-escalate if possible. But on the same token, I would tell the individual who's being stopped by an officer, don't assume that's automatically that he's picking on you. Hear him out, hear what he has to say, and you may agree, you may disagree with it.
Right.
But try to be respectful. You're not going to win any argument at the scene.
Yeah, don't try to litigate on the scene.
You're not going to win that.
Yeah.
Listen to what the officer has to say. And as an attorney, I would tell you, don't say anything.
Yeah.
Just listen to what he has to say. Take that all in. And if you disagree with it, go get you an attorney, and we'll go there and we'll address it. But don't try to have to fight that at the scene about, you're lying, this is not what I did, or this is not what I've done. You're not going to win that battle at the scene.
And always comply.
Yeah. Well,
pretty much when it comes to officers' commands.
Well, I'm indifferent. I don't say always comply. People have rights.
Yeah.
And so I don't ask you for anyone, I expect for anyone to give up their constitutional rights.
Gotcha.
By complying. So I'm not advocating for that, but we do have, that's a fine line there.
Yeah.
Now, if the officer gives you a lawful command that you have to comply with, and that doesn't violate your constitutional rights, and then you should comply.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is that most people don't know or understand what their constitutional rights are, or the limits on them.
Yeah.
So unless you know that information, don't just, you need to be an informed citizen when you're out there in the streets advocating for your rights. Because if you're advocating the wrong way or without informed knowledge of what can legally be done, then that's not to your advantage,
Yeah.
So, so I'm not an individual to tell people to give up their constitutional right by complying, but I would ask them to cooperate as best as possible if you feel that there's not a violation of your rights in you to do so. Or if you feel that it's not going to be that harmful to you, that's up to each individual.
Yeah.
As far as how they going to address that issue, but the goal is to get information. There are certain things that an officer can request that you do.
Yeah.
They can ask you to step out the car.
Yeah.
A lot of individuals say, well, why are you asking me to step out the car? Well, the law says they can.
They can.
They can.
Yeah.
You have individuals who are passengers in the vehicle who will say, well, I wasn't even driving. I'm a passenger. Why are you making me step out the car? Well, the law says they
can do it.
And they can. You would have to step out if that's a request that they make of you and things of that nature. So an individual who feels that their rights may be violated in that situation may not have a full understanding of the law, and then that kind of escalates that thing now because you're not being in compliance, you're not stepping out of the vehicle, and the law says that they can ask and request that you step outside of the vehicle.
Gotcha.
And
but that's the purpose of the law clinic. I mean, the workshops,
yes,
to get that information out there so people can know, and they won't be put in a position to cause it to escalate to something else. So now I want to go here. What would you tell them when it comes to going to court? What would be the advice you would give a person if they got a summons to go to court, or if they find themselves in legal perils? What advice would you give them?
Well, if it's something criminal, definitely. I tell everybody you need an attorney.
Yeah.
I don't care how big or how small it is. You're not going to be as big of an advocate for yourself without the knowledge and experience that comes with being in a courtroom.
Yeah.
You're going up against a prosecutor who may have been an attorney 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years.
Right.
He has a lot of training, he has a lot of legal experience, and you going in there, you're a novice, you're not an attorney, you don't have the legal training, and you're expected to be that guy.
Yeah. Right.
You could be right.
Right.
But it's going to be very difficult for you to be that guy.
Yeah.
And things of that nature, because this is what he's trained to do, and this is not what you're trained to do. So you can't, you may not be as effective as he or she is going to be, who has legal education, legal training, and legal experience, and this is what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So that's not to your advantage. So, but I get it. Some people, I'm paying for this attorney, I can't afford that, or the cost of the attorney.
You can't afford not to have it.
Well, sometimes you can't afford not to have it, but I get it. Sometimes the attorney may be more than the ticket,
right?
Right. Or whatever the violation or the charges is going to be. But the thing is, I believe that for people who feel that they've been wrongfully charged and things of that nature, when it's known that, hey, you're going to have an attorney, it's less likely that people pick at you.
Yeah.
If you assume that that's been occurring, less likely, it's kind of like people don't pick on, you're not going to find many people pick on Mike Tyson,
right,
or Renix Lewis, or
right,
certain people, because they know they have the ability to fight back.
Yeah.
And that's what an attorney gives you. It gives you the ability to fight back. So
yeah.
People don't pick on you. They don't overcharge you. They, and things of that nature. Because with an attorney, if it is known that you're going to have one, that means that you have the ability to fight back.
Yeah.
So it makes you less of a target if you deem that you are one. And it also gives you a better chance of defending yourself against the charge, or even being charged and stopped at all.
Yeah.
Because again, we know that you're going to defend yourself to the fullest, and with the proper representation. So that's always helpful. But then again, but some people choose not to go that route. They have that right to do that. They may not have the income or financial ability at that time to do it. So I would advise them at that point, if you can't afford one, and to just don't walk into a courtroom, with your hands and trying to go off of common sense.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize the law has nothing to do with common sense.
Yeah.
Common sense has nothing at all to do with the law. There's some type of policy, generally speaking, that or why this is that way.
And the court will appoint you one if you can't afford one. In some cases.
In criminal cases, they should in every case.
In every criminal case.
Yeah, they should. In our courtroom, we will if they request it.
Yeah.
But even when they had the opportunity to get one, because we have a full-time public defender there at our courtroom.
Yeah.
You still see people who can't. If they can't afford one, they still won't select the public defender.
Yeah.
People want to go and for some reason do it on their own. I don't understand it.
Yeah, because you don't know the law.
You don't. If you come to my courtroom, you'll see me advise people oftentimes, hey, you need to get you an attorney.
Right.
You need to get your attorney. As the judge, I'm telling them, hey, you need to go and get you an attorney. And they some of the most serious charges, they're still walking out without an attorney.
Yeah.
And that's very unfortunate for them. But hey, all I can do as a judge is, I can't advocate for you, but I can tell you, you may need to get you someone to advocate for you. And if you won't listen to the judge who tells you that, then much anybody gonna be able to tell you.
This is a very subjective question. How would you advise a person to pick a lawyer? I know based upon the needs of a lawyer, but how do you know you have a quality good lawyer that's gonna give you a good legal defense or advocate for you?
That's a good question. Talk to people. If you look for a lawyer, you got you one that you feel that may be that you want to use. See if there's any other people who
that's good.
Have talk to some of your friends, family members, other people, and see if any of them have had any experience with that lawyer.
Yeah.
And things of that nature. So that's going to be important. You can see all the commercials you want.
That's what I was really referencing.
Yeah. Those commercials doesn't mean that that's a good attorney.
Right.
We see a lot of us attorneys. We see a lot of commercials out here of other attorneys.
And you probably done beat them all.
We see those, and I think, in some instances, it can give a distorted view of who you actually deal with. The public pretty much thinks that these people have all these commercials and things of that nature, that these individuals are that's who we need to go to.
Yeah.
And they don't know a thing about those attorneys and things like that.
And you might not deal with them personally. You might not get to see them personally.
Whether you get to see them personally or not, that is not a replacement, or that is not a good observation of their experience or abilities in the courtroom.
Yeah.
It's not a good indicator.
Yeah.
In fact, I will argue that there's no indicator at all. This is just telling you this is who I am. Commercial all is telling you this is who I am and this is what I do.
Yeah.
And this is how to contact me. And I'm willing to represent you. That's all it's telling you.
Yeah.
But it's not saying anything about how well I perform.
Yeah.
How well I advocate, how knowledgeable I am, how well I will listen to your issue. You only can get that by observing that person in the courtroom or speaking to others who have observed that individual in the courtroom. So I'm not against commercials, but I just think that individuals need to be more informed. If all you got from a commercial is my name,
right,
how to contact me, and what areas I practice in, then you hadn't gotten much. You could have got that from the phone book,
right?
Or you could have got that from Google. That same information. So it's there, but that's just an individual saying, "Don't look me up on Google. I'm gonna come to you. I'm gonna pop out right here just in case you didn't see me on Google. I'm gonna knock on your door and tell you who I am." That's basically what that is. But I think that's insufficient information from choosing or selecting an attorney. That doesn't mean that individuals who advertise are not quality attorneys.
Right,
I'm
that's
saying
right.
The advertisement itself doesn't necessarily mean that you are a quality attorney. It doesn't give enough information for anyone to come anywhere close to making that decision.
Yeah.
Things of that nature. So.
And just because if an attorney is advertising that they do auto wrecks and that doesn't mean that guys who don't have the same level of experience and ability to litigate their case to give you a good outcome. Yeah. That's what I would argue.
Yeah. Well, and that is true. It is. I mean, I can be an attorney coming straight out of law school 1 year, and if I have the financial resources to advertise,
yeah.
Personal educations or or other things, if I got that, I don't know nothing. I I'm just fresh out of law school. I don't know much at all, but this commercial says that, hey, come hire me. This guy, so it's not a good indicator at all of the quality of work that you can perform. It just says that, hey, this is what I do, but it doesn't. It's not proof of how well I can perform. At all. It's not that at all. So I would say to anybody who, when they're selecting an attorney, I mean, it's okay to hire an attorney who advertises. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I don't see anything wrong with it. It's just something that I choose not to do.
Right.
But for those who do that, look at those individuals who they hire based off of advertisement, I'll ask them to go a step further. Go and ask some people. Hey, what do you know about this attorney? Did you use them? How was it? And things of that nature. And go from there. And I think that's the best way for selecting an attorney.
So I know you get to deal with people in real time when it comes to, because I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I know you're restrained in answering some of them. When you deal with young people, and you deal with a lot of them, and you see them coming throughout through your courtroom, but also you represent some of them, what do you think the biggest problem is when it comes to seeing these young people in your courtroom having to represent them? What do you think the divide? What do you think the problem? What do you think the issue, the tension is? What's wrong with our young people is what I'm trying to ask. I know you got to be restrained, but what do you think the biggest issue is?
Well, that's a good question. I would say from my, and I guess every generation can say this right here. A lot has changed since I was young.
Yeah, everybody can say that now for sure.
And my parents said it when we was coming up.
Yeah.
Said y'all kids are different, and and now I'm my parents now. And I'm saying these kids are different. So every generation can actually say that. But for me, I just kind of believe that. I think that our younger generation, there's a lack of respect now.
Yeah.
Any levels of authority.
Lack of respect for any levels of authority. That's right.
It is definitely a need that it definitely needs to be improved. How do we get there? I don't know. Yeah. So I don't have a fix for it.
But it's a lack of respect for any authority.
Yeah, a lack of respect for any authority. It is that is something that I see as a significant shift from my upbringing.
Yeah.
It was when I was growing up. You would rarely see a kid who would just curse in front of adults.
Right.
We're having them come in the courtroom and curse.
Oh yeah.
So that's to me that's a great shift right there.
Yeah.
I think that plays a role, and it plays a large role.
Yeah.
With I think our younger generation who comes in the presence of law enforcement or in the courtroom.
Yeah, they just have a lack of authority, a lack of respect for any authority, whether it's their parents, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's judge, whether it's a school teacher. They just don't have the level of respect that some positions are worthy of respect, that you just don't say anything in the presence of those people. So do you think that lack of respect when it comes to these young people, what else do you think is contributing to you seeing as many young people as you seeing now, and because I'm on really shifted to just how many young women, because I've set up and observed that it's just as many young women as it is young men in your courtroom as a judge, and I don't know about representing. So what else do you think it is besides a lack of respect?
Well, respect would be the major issue.
Yeah.
And that's going to be for the males and the females.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to just say lack of respect for just authority figure. It's almost just appears there's a lack of respect for anybody.
Anybody.
For anybody. Their peers and.
I get you. Yeah.
Just anyway, it's just there's a definite need for an improvement in that particular area. So I think that's for the males and the females.
Yeah.
So that would be the strongest thing that I can stand on. I think if you can fix that issue,
yeah.
It's hard to talk to somebody. People who you don't respect, you don't take much from them.
Yeah.
You don't take their advice. You may not listen to what they have to say or pay it much attention. And you may not be willing to change certain behavior for people whom you don't respect.
Yeah. So
it's kind of hard to fix individuals who may or work with individuals who don't respect you.
Yeah.
So this is whether you're on your job dealing with your employer, whether it's your parents, whether it's your friends.
Yeah.
It makes a very difficult arrangement for getting along and working together or trying to improve certain areas of your life if you're getting the information from people whom you don't respect.
Yeah.
So that it has to start there. Yeah, I think if you get there and then get to the point where these individuals have some respect for you, now you got an ear that may can listen to what you have to say, and then you can begin to transform or change certain attitudes and behavior because they're willing to listen.
Yeah.
But that they're not going to listen to people whom they don't respect. So that's
just a lack of respect for anybody.
Yes.
Even really themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
You could argue that's well, even for themselves. So that is the biggest thing that I can see.
Yeah. So and then you talk about this idea of environmental and cultural influences, the music. It's just the culture. When I say the culture, how things have shifted from when you and I grew up. The music they listen to, the people they hang around with, what they can do. You got social and digital media. You got video games young men play. You got a culture of music, video vixens, and now everything has changed. That has had a profound effect on how young people see themselves. And because of a lack of how they see themselves, they present themselves and behave in an environment in a different way. So what do you think has had the biggest effect on the behavior of children and young people?
Well, definitely, social media.
Social media.
Yeah, social media will have, and unfortunately for our generation, that's something that we didn't grow up in.
We did.
If we had grown up in that situation with social media and access, who knows? We may be those same individuals.
Yeah.
So we may be the individual that we speak about right now, but we didn't. But these individuals, this group of generation, they are growing up in an environment where social media is very impressionable upon their daily lives. They live their lives about what they post on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, or their image or view of what how a person should be.
Right.
How a person should act, how a person should look, all comes from what's on social media.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of those Pandora boxes that's been opened. I don't know how you put that back in.
I don't think it's no putting it back.
Yeah.
It's had a profound influence. So what do you think, not as a judge, not as a lawyer, but as a parent, what age is appropriate for your kids to start being exposed to social media? When do they get to get a cell phone? When do they get to get an Instagram page, a TikTok page? When is that?
Well, me personally, I am, when it comes to cell phones, I am strong opponent probably of cell phones until a certain age.
Yeah.
You know, unless there's specific
reason
for it. You know, my daughter, and she has a cell phone, and she's had one for several years, but it got to a point where, due to certain situations and things that she may have been involved in or places that she was at, I need to speak with her. I need to get her one.
Yeah.
But with that being said, you know, and I say that, you know, we grew up in an environment that we was just as active and involved in things, but we didn't have any cell phone.
Yeah.
And, but our parents knew where we were.
Yep.
They knew where we were, and they knew what time we was going to be done.
Yeah.
And we knew what time to be home. So that was very different. But now you got a lot of kids who are involved in activities, and they're driving themselves. We didn't have cars.
We didn't have cars.
We didn't have any cars, you know. So, but they're driving themselves around. But so it all depends on the maturity level of your child. You need to have to understand how responsible your child is. Yeah. Do your child listen to you? Yeah. You know, so that's important. So you can, each parent, you know, what I would say the age for this child may be a different age for another child.
How about social media? When do you allow them to have a social media footprint or a social media presence, getting a Facebook page, TikTok, Instagram?
I don't recommend it at all. I don't recommend it. My daughter now, she's 16. Yeah. Right now, she's not supposed to, you know, I can't say she don't have one.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
She's not supposed to have one.
Yeah.
And things of that nature. Now, I know that she has one social media page. I think it's Instagram, but that's something that she got that. Yeah. And I allowed her to get that because it was something at one point in time. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were doing through the school. Yeah. And it may have been when they was trying to run for, if they was running for
student body officers,
student body, or I think some of the stuff they were doing may have put with Instagram. I didn't like that. Yeah. You know, and at all, but I allowed her to get it for that. But I don't allow her to go and post anything on Facebook. Anything. She don't have a Facebook page. She ain't supposed to.
She's supposed to.
You know, who to say that they don't sneak and.
Yeah, that's right. You don't know what these little boogers will do.
But,
that's right.
But you know, I'm not for her, and I talk to her about it. I don't want you to tell her all the time. I don't want you on social media. Yeah. You know, for us.
And also because you're a public figure. I would say if I was, and I tried to, as a father, shield my children, because being a public figure, you know, people say anything about you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's really dangerous in that area that you try to protect them because you're public image. You know, you got a public image, but also to protect them as well. And so, you know, you kind of want that moderated, because that does have an effect on the psyche of these kids too. So I want to shift to talk about the adults that you have. Because, you know, not only do we have a problem and a crisis among young people, but adults, you know, how we function and operate, because you see them in the courtroom all the time. What advice or what could you say to the adults that they need to do different, not to be coming in contact with you as a lawyer or in the courtroom? What do you think is the biggest crisis among adults, grown people?
Well, again, I mean, and if you're coming into our courtroom, what you'll probably see is a lot of repeat offenders.
Gotcha.
Yeah, a lot of repeat offenders. You know, it's not their first rodeo, second rodeo, third rodeo, fourth rodeo. They're there over and over, and oftentimes for the same thing. Those individuals, they're in a category of their own. I guess you could say that, you know, they have not. They're old enough to be responsible and to change ways, but some of them they're just not going to change. They're going to do what they're going to do. But then you have the other individuals who come into the courtroom. These are isolated incidents, but that they may be involved in, and they're coming in. You'll probably never see them again. But oftentimes, what they come in with is a definite misunderstanding of the law.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, and they may be hyper and things of that nature. And what I do is I go to great lengths to try to explain the law to people when they come in the courtroom.
Right.
You know, that, you know, especially if I want to have a ruling against them. Well, if I rule in their favor, they're gonna know why.
Yeah.
And if I rule against them, they're gonna know why.
Yeah.
I think the officer, if I rule against him, he needs to know why.
Right.
I rule, because that's education for the officer.
Right.
But it's also education for the defendant as well.
Yeah.
In both ways. If I rule for the officer need to know why. It ain't because, oh, I'm taking your side.
Right.
You know, we're supposed to be on the same team, because we're not. Like, again, I'm on private baseball guy.
Because you're completely unbiased when it comes to police officers. Just because both of y'all represent the law, you're there to serve as an independent, like you said, an umpire, calls strikes and balls. You ain't partial toward the defendant nor toward the law. I mean, the law enforcement officer. You just you just ruling based on the law.
I mean, and the law said that's what I'm supposed to do. I can't. I'm not part of the prosecution. I'm not part of the officers. We're not on the same team. I'm not on the defendant's team. I'm not on anybody's team. I'm, I'm basically a mediator, for lack of a better word, a mediator. That person just right in the middle, and I'm just going to tell you, hey, you're right on this, you're wrong on that. And it doesn't matter whether that's the officer or the defendant. That's a job that, it would be a very unfair system. And I'm not going to say that sometimes you may not can go into some courtrooms and it wouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
But it's a very unfair system if you got the officer, the prosecutor, and judge all working together against a defendant. That's very unfair.
Yeah.
That's not what our system is designed to do.
Yeah.
And that's not the setup. So my goal is to be as impartial as I can, and to give my understanding of what the law is as best I can. And I think when you do that, you have a better opportunity for an individual. There's been plenty of people who've come in my courtroom and they're upset. And once you read the law to them, you read it to them. And that's what I do. I pull it out and I read it to them.
Yeah.
And when you read it to them and you explain to them what that means, at that point, it's like, oh, you know that.
Yeah.
Well, I understand you didn't know that.
Yeah.
But, it's, and that's why I have those clinics, because I want to give you little tidbits that,
and that's the importance of the clinics too. Yeah.
That's definitely the importance of the clinic, so that they will know.
Yeah.
And more and they can go and tell someone else, hey, I heard this. That's very, very important. There's a lot of things about the law that is very important that people know. We can just look at real simple things, such as a seatbelt.
Yeah.
I've had people come in there and say, they charged me with 3 seatbelt violations. I had my seatbelt on, but they had 2 adults that was in the back seat that didn't have theirs on. Why wasn't they charged with no seatbelt?
Right.
Why, and you look at a common sense approach to it, you may look at it as, those 2 adults, they're grown.
Right.
They should get the ticket for no seatbelt. They know how to put their seatbelt on.
Right.
That would be very well true. However, if you're driving that vehicle, you shouldn't pull off until they have their seatbelts on.
And see, that kind of stuff people don't know.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff people don't know. And that, I think the legal clinic's really gonna help you understand these things, and you're getting that information. Yeah.
That is policy versus common sense.
Yeah.
The common sense approach would be each individual who's an adult should be responsible for themselves. They want to get thrown out of a car, that's their right.
Right.
They want to get pulled over, they get a ticket. They can get a ticket.
Right.
Well, but the policy argument of it would be that, hey, you the driver of the vehicle, you can't make that person put on their seatbelt. You probably can't make them, but you ain't got to drive that car. You ain't got to move that car not 1 inch.
Right.
So at that point, they got to either put their seatbelt on or we're going to be stuck right here.
Right.
And now we don't have to worry about nobody being thrown out of a vehicle.
Right.
Because they didn't have the seatbelt on. So if you pull off, if you have an accident, they could possibly be injured. So you don't pull off without them putting that seatbelt on. If you do, you get the ticket.
See, that's interesting to know. I wanted to ask you about this because since you've been on the bench and practicing law, mental illness, do you think it's worse now than when you first started? Do you think it's getting worse? And do you think it's more of a social problem? And let's just talk about mental illness because that's a big issue. I see a lot of people in court now, and mental issue is a big issue. Is it worse now than when you first started?
I honestly, I don't know if it's worse because I think it may have been already. We have a lot of it. I think it's already may have been a lot.
Gotcha.
You know, and maybe a lot of them, you know, due to my lack of involvement at that time, I may just not, you know, if you don't deal in the area, then you may not notice that there's a lot of mental illness people because that's not the area that you're involved in.
Yeah.
But when you get into a certain position and you start to deal with those individuals, then you realize how many you have. That may not necessarily be equated to an increase. It just may be you're now more informed.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's more or if I'm just better informed than I was previously. But there's a definite need for, in my opinion, some treatment centers, some long-term treatment centers.
Yeah.
Some free treatment centers. Because typically the people who are coming here suffering from mental illness, they're not going to have the funds to pay for long-term treatment.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a need. We have a lot of individuals who come in our courtroom who suffer from mental illness. You will see that you bring me a person who suffers from mental illness, there's a strong chance I can also show you an individual who's also experimenting with drugs.
Yeah.
And they're using those drugs to cope with it.
And you're very good at that. I've seen you. You're judicial from the bench, and when you start looking at the mental illness, and that thing you say, if I test you today, what would you test positive for? Because you're able to. So is that from training or just experience? Do you get any mental health training as a judge, or is it just based on your experience?
That's just based on my experience.
Yeah.
You see enough in there, and you gotta have compassion for those individuals. You should have compassion for all individuals.
Yeah.
And you should be able to recognize when someone may need help.
Yeah.
And my goal is to try to recognize that this is not maybe everybody who come to your courtroom, they're not an individual that's out here that's trying to do wrong.
Yeah.
But some people who come to your courtroom are suffering from some type of mental illness. They're not on their medication. So there are many different reasons that may bring people in contact with you in your courtroom. And if you can help those individuals, we need to do our best to help them. And that's what I try to do. We try our best to find treatment facilities for those individuals.
Yeah.
We get a lot of them in treatment, you
Yeah.
know, but there's definitely a need for more treatment facilities for mental illness. And there's definitely a need for more treatment facilities for those who are addicted to drugs or alcohol. If you eliminate those two criteria from a courtroom, that's amazing the number of crimes that you will
eliminate.
That you could possibly eliminate.
Yeah.
You know, but I would probably say that most crime that we have that experience. It may be the result of alcohol or drugs or some type of mental illness. Somewhere it's going to play a role in it.
Yeah.
Majority of it. In my opinion, majority. I hadn't looked at any numbers on it, but from what I can see, just through the naked eye, without putting pen to paper and just comparing it, you can always associate drugs, alcohol, or some type of mental illness to crime that's committed. You know, to the majority of crime that's committed. It's gonna play a role in it. You know, if it's a fight, they've been drinking.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, if it was a shooting, that you can bet you they're probably involved with some drugs or something in it. So it's gonna be some type of connection.
Yeah. Mental illness and drugs. Both of them are gonna be on both spectrum.
Yeah.
Another thing that I see that you deal a lot with, and I didn't know until me and Aaron started sitting in the courtroom, we just come as observers and to watch, is domestic violence. I did not know. Nobody could have ever told me that much domestic violence is going on in this community until I sit in the courtroom. And so what do you think is sparking all of this domestic violence and this, what's up behind all this? That just blows my mind.
Well, again, it goes with, I don't think it's any more or less. I just think it's, I think people been fighting each other a long time, ever since, for years and years. It just now come to a time that, one, they're starting to report it more.
Gotcha.
They're starting to file charges more. More people are becoming informed that, hey, if you hit me, I can go and file these charges. And oftentimes, people now are more calling dialing 911. Either they're dialing or someone else, maybe a neighbor or uncle,
Gotcha.
who are saying, hey, they're dialing 911, and law enforcement get there and they're seeing it. And so I just think that a lot of it's more being reported due to people see that, hey, I can do something about it.
Right.
Versus it being more. I think that probably since my great granddad in them days,
absolutely,
they've been fighting ever since then.
Yeah.
And back then, wasn't nobody calling the police. They just dealt with it.
They just dealt with it.
And but now they're saying, hey, enough is enough of that, and there's something I can do about it.
Because the domestic laws, the domestic violence laws in the state of Mississippi and stalking laws, that stuff's become pretty strict now. Because if you get a domestic situation, the officer presses charges whether the wife or the other person or the man does or not.
Yeah, the officer can bring those charges, but they try to get if it's a domestic violence situation, the officer can bring those charges.
Yeah.
But we try to get the cooperation of the alleged victim.
Yeah.
To either file those charges or participate in them, but we don't have to have her to actually file the charges.
Right.
But we may need her to convict him.
Gotcha.
But we don't have to have her necessarily file.
So and that's something I didn't know. So you got to have the charge, and you ain't got to have the charge to file the charge, but you got to have to actually convict him. She got to be able to testify to what.
Well, you got to have, unless the officer was there and witnessed the abuse taking place. Anything he has to say is going to be hearsay.
Yeah.
Or maybe, there won't be anything, but it can be ruled, some things may be ruled as hearsay. Now, if the person himself, the alleged abuser, says that, yes, I hit her, well, that won't be hearsay. That'll be admissible. The officer's going to say, well, he told me he hit her and knocked her across the head, and that's a statement against interest, so that'll be admissible. But anything that the victim told, will be hearsay.
Yeah.
So it's important to have the victim there and have their cooperation, so that in order to curtail domestic violence, you're going to have, we have some people come in our courtroom who 7, 8, 9 times for domestic violence on the same person.
On the same person.
Yeah, but what happens is the victim never shows up for court.
Yeah.
And so when they don't show up for court, it's hard to win that without a witness of what happened.
So I'm gonna let a man whoop her 5 or 6 times and drop the charge and never show up.
Yeah, but it ain't always men whipping women.
Sometimes women whipping men. I've seen that. I've seen that.
And it may not be necessarily because she can just whoop him, but because he makes I'm not gonna hit her back. I'm just gonna try to restrain as much as possible. But she's giving him the business the whole time.
Yeah.
So we have men who go and file the charges.
Yeah.
But as well,
So let me ask you this: what do you think is the cause of all of these social ills, young people and mental illness and domestic violence? What do you think some of the issues causing all this? Because you got to sometimes get to the root of the problem. These are the symptoms. You see by the time it's a symptom, but what do you think is causing all these social ills?
I don't know what's causing it all, but again, I say social media, lack of respect. I think drugs and alcohol, all that plays into it.
Yeah.
Again, I mean,
what about the dissolving of the family? The family structure is not as strong. Community's not as strong. Because you remember back in the day, if if we got in trouble, we might get a whipping by every adult we pass before we get
but the problem that you have nowadays that, you can't, it's very difficult to be able to direct someone's child.
You sure right.
Yeah, to say, hey, son, don't do that.
Right.
And that child may, hey, you ain't my mama, you ain't my daddy, you can't tell me what to do. And mama will back him up on that. Daddy will back him up on that. They don't want no one saying anything to their child. Who you to say something to my child? Yeah. So we've come a long ways from, they say it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. Well, now they don't want the village anywhere near the child. And for sometimes it's for some good reason. Good reason. Yeah, sometimes the village is right.
That's right.
So it all depends.
That is true now. Yeah.
Sometimes the village is right. So when we, I tell my children, I tell Bailey, tell Will, if there's a problem, for example, at school, you don't like something that the teacher or our coach has told you to do, unless it's something that I explicitly said, you are not to do this for anyone.
Right.
And we kind of know what those things are.
Right.
There's going to be some things that it's going to be, if a teacher, a coach, or someone says, hey, come with me in my car somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, you're going to never do that.
Never do that.
Never do that.
Right.
Period. And everything else. So it'd be one of those things that they can go and say, well, I got to disobey you because my dad explicitly told me don't do this. Yeah. So they're going to be those things that I'm going to put out there. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to say, hey, whatever teacher tells you to do, you do it. It's not your decision to determine if it's right or wrong.
Right.
If there's an issue, when you bring it to me, I'll determine whether I agree with it or not, and I'll have that discussion with that adult or with that teacher. Yeah. But in that moment right there, you be respectful and you listen to that adult. Unless it's one of those explicit things that I've told you not to do. Yeah. And we will cover those things. I cover those with my children. Yeah. And they know what those are, and we already know what those things are going to type of deal with. But other than that, you are to do those things. Yeah. Unless it's something that's going to harm you physically. Yeah. You go to, they tell you to sit down, you sit down. They tell you to whatever. I need for you to go do A, B, C. Yeah. You go do A, B, and C. Yeah. And I'll deal with whether you should have done it or not. Right. I mean, whether the teacher or adult was wrong or not in having you to do it. Yeah. But you do it. You got to listen. I tell my children, you don't have the wisdom and experience to tell an adult that they're wrong.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
You don't have that. Yeah. So if you're not there yet, hopefully you get that, and that doesn't mean that in a situation you're not right. You may be 100% right. Right. You may be 100% right. Right. But that's not important for you to be right. Right. It's important for you to learn the hierarchy of respect for authority. Yeah. And because one day you're going to be an adult. Yeah. And you're going to be telling someone to do some things. Yeah. And if they're telling you that, oh, you're wrong, and therefore I'm not going to do it, it's hard to do. You may be wrong, but you still respect them to follow certain directions and things of that nature, and they need to do it.
So which one do you enjoy more, being a judge or being a lawyer? The courtroom, standing in front of the judge, or being the judge?
Being as an attorney.
You love being an attorney?
I love being an attorney. I love being an advocate. But on the same token, I like being a judge too. Yeah. I think that being a judge gives me the opportunity to treat people like I want to be treated. Yeah. If I was in a courtroom, I've never liked to be in a courtroom where, being yelled at by the judge or talked down to by the judge. So I don't talk down to people in the courtroom. I treat them like humans. Yeah. And I try my best to. You'll never see in my courtroom where I yell and scream. Yeah.
Even though you get yelled and screamed at.
Yeah, I get yelled and screamed at.
Cussed at.
Yeah, cursed at. I keep my composure. Yeah. And I handle those situations. And I do what I try to, what I hope and expect for a law enforcement officer to do.
Yeah.
Try to de-escalate that situation.
Yeah.
I would tell them, look, sir, you see how I'm talking to you now.
Yeah.
And be respectful. Can we both agree that we can talk to each other in a respectful manner? So I try to tone it down, and they may or may not listen. If they don't listen, I have tools to address that situation, but that doesn't mean that I have to yell and scream to do it.
Yeah.
And so I don't do that. I don't talk down. I don't put them down, but I do try to build them up. And so I think that that's the goal. And being there, I like for people. One of the things that I like about my courtroom is that I try to give people the experience that they feel that they should have in any courtroom.
Yeah.
And when I say that, you get a lot of people who feel that, don't go to court, you don't get mistreated,
yeah.
You can't trust them, or they're gonna be mean to you, or they're just gonna do what, but I try to dismiss a lot of those things by how I deal with people, by my explanation to them. I allow them, and my clerks probably don't like it because they're ready to get court.
That's right.
Court going, but I feel it's important to. Sometimes people just want to say their piece.
Yeah.
You let them say it, and I give them time to say it. Sometimes I give them too much time to say it, but when it's over with, if they're wrong, I tell them, I heard everything you said, but this is why you're wrong. Yeah. And I'll go to the law and show it to them. Yeah. And I think that's very beneficial to explain those things to folks.
But you're also educating the people in the gallery.
Yes.
I mean, because I've sat behind people like, oh man, I didn't know that. I got to change. And a lot of people I've sit behind, I'm going to change my plea. I didn't know that.
Well,
you see what I'm saying?
And that's the main reason why I do it. I do it not only for the defendants in the courtroom, but I also do it for the people who are out there listening to the gallery so they can see.
Yeah.
Because, they're there, and if you don't explain it, they have the same mindset as someone else. Man, this person did A, and they, and the judge did this right here to them. That was so wrong. Yeah. But when you explain it, everybody walks out of there with understanding. Everybody walks out there with information that they can use and that they can tell everybody else. Yeah. And it helps people not to be in those situations. Right. When you know better, you do better. Yeah. That's the thing. But it's hard to do better when you don't know better. Yeah. So we got to get that information out, and we whether it's the officer, whether it's the defendant, or whomever, we got to try to get as much positive information out there as we can and as possible, so that people can help themselves. Okay,
we getting close to the close. So I want to talk about your legal practice, where people can contact you, but I also want to talk about the legal clinic that you have coming up, and give a little information about that, contacts, and when it's going to be, what you're going to be covering. So let's talk about how people can get in contact with you.
Well, my law firm is Allen Law Firm. We're located at 319 West Jefferson Street, Suite D. It's right behind the municipal court building, and right down the street on Jefferson Street from the circuit court, or the big courthouse, as we call it. I can be reached by coming there personally to my office. I can be reached, my office number is 662-269-3383, or you can shoot me an email at willie@allenlawfirm.org. So those are my contact information for anybody who wants to reach out to me for legal assistance. If I can help you, I will. One of the things that I do before I take your money, I tell you where you stand. Yeah. And where I think you stand. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to tell you that you're going to win. Yeah. It doesn't mean I'm going to tell you you're going to lose, but I give you my honest answer and impression of where you stand before I take your money, because I think that's important. And sometimes I may not know. I lose a lot of business sometimes because of what I tell people. Yeah. And I have individuals who come in, and I tell them, look, you're not going to win this case. Right. This is what you have. Yeah. And they feel that you've taken the hope away. And my goal is not to take the hope away. My goal is to tell you this is where you stand. Yeah. My honest assessment. Yeah. So I've had people who not hire me for that, and then who will come back to me a year later and say, you were right. Right. I wouldn't have paid all this money over here for that right there, and you told me what's going to happen. And that's what I do. Yeah. My goal is to tell you, because it's a better understanding when you up front with people on the front end. Now, they still want to spend their money, because sometimes people, it's about the principle to them.
Yeah.
You know, it ain't about the money, it's about principle.
Yeah.
You know, so, and they just want that day in court.
Yeah.
You know, and I tell people, well, you don't have a winning case and your day in court costs.
Yeah, it does cost.
It costs.
Yeah.
You know, so, but they want to tell their story, and if you want your story told you that back, we can tell it. But I just want you to understand this is where you stand.
And I think the legal perspective, I got to, you paying me to show you how you can tell it. Because you going on emotions right now. You can't go in there doing all this talking. There's a legal way you can tell your story.
Well, it's the thing is that it's kind of like oftentimes when you got it like in divorce cases.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it doesn't matter what the outcome is. That person wants to tell their side of how they've been mistreated.
Yeah.
I just want y'all to know this is what was done to me. Now, what happens after that, they don't care.
They don't really care.
They don't really care. But they want to tell what happened.
Yeah.
You know, and how they was wronged and how bad they feel. You know, you may have an agreement that you want a divorce, they want a divorce.
Yeah.
Both sides want one.
Yeah.
They both agree to a divorce, and they may agree on property settlement and everything else.
Yeah.
But one person may not accept it because that signing the paper doesn't allow them the opportunity to voice their mistreatment. They want to be able to get it off their chest.
Yeah.
They didn't have a chance to express it, and I get that.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes that's their closure.
Yeah.
That they need. They need to get it off their chest. They need to tell how they was wrong, and that can be very important. To be honest with you, that's very important to a lot of my clients. A lot of my clients come to me. Typically, the clients I get is those who want to tell their story.
Yeah.
Whether who want to be heard. They want to say, "Hey, this is how I was treated. Hey, this is how the officer did me." They want me to be an advocate for them and go in there and tell what happened and put it on the table.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm willing to do that. But again, I let them know the pros and cons of doing that and the risks that comes with doing that. You know, what you may be giving up. You know, sometimes it's one to take all. You know, so you know if you
risk it,
you risk it, it's one to take all. You got a good deal right here, but if you don't accept this deal, it's one to take all. So you need to have that understanding.
This is going to be very suggestive. What do you think your success rate is when cases you take?
I try not to lose.
You try not to lose.
I try not to lose. So
losing is not an option.
Yeah, I try to. I got a pretty good success rate in the courtroom. You know, and I would say I generally get a positive outcome for my clients.
Yeah.
I don't guarantee victory.
Yeah.
I tell them that I say, look, what you're telling me, that's your version of it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm hearing it from you, and this is the biggest advice I would give people looking for an attorney. If an attorney tells you you're going to win, that's probably an attorney that's trying to take your money.
Right.
Because how do they know that you're going to win? All they've spoken to is you.
You, right.
They ain't heard
that's
the other side.
Good advice.
They ain't heard the other side of it at all. And all they heard is your side, but yet you're going to win. We don't know if what you're saying is true. I don't even know you. Right. So how I know that what you're telling me is true. But whatever your side is, there's also an opposite side to it over here. So when attorneys tell you, you got a good case, you're going to win, so I tell them that, look.
That should be a red flag.
That should be a red flag there, because they're not interested in the outcome. They may just be interested in taking your money. Yeah. Because if someone tells you that you're going to win, you got a great case, they hadn't spoken to anyone but you. They hadn't done any investigation. They hadn't saw anything.
Don't even know the temperament of the judge, what he's going to allow, what he's not going to allow.
They don't know anything.
Yeah.
They hadn't spoken to anybody but you.
Right.
So how do they know?
That's really good advice.
They don't know. They don't know.
Yeah.
All I can tell them is that based off of what you're telling me, if this is true, what you're telling me, you have a case. But are you going to win? I can't say you're going to win because I don't know what the other side's going to say. Yeah. I don't know what the other side's going to say. I don't know what the evidence that they're going to present forward to you. I don't know. I don't even know your background. Yeah. You could be telling the truth, but if you've being convicted in the past of something that's dealing with your honesty.
Yeah.
They may not believe you now when you tell your story.
Yeah.
But I said, I don't know any of these things.
Yeah.
But what you're telling me, how it's going, because I don't know your background. All I know is the information that you provide me now. Now, I will obtain that information eventually and be able to give you more directly where I think it will be. But anyone who's telling you that, hey, yeah, you're going to win, you got this, pay this, yeah, you're going to win this custody. You're going to win this whatever it may be.
That's a raised red flag.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the legal thing, because I always ask 3 questions, and I definitely want to ask you all these last 3 questions. I ask everybody to come on the show. Okay. Tell me about the legal clinic.
The legal clinic is something I've been doing, and I was doing it every quarter, but I'm going to start doing it now once a month. I'm trying to do it the first Monday. I've already reserved the library the next 6 months.
So the location is at the library?
Yeah, the Lee County Library.
The County Library.
The County Library, and then conference room upstairs. My next one is, I think it's on April, it's in April. The first Monday.
First Monday
in April. So
first Monday in April.
Yeah. So I was able to obtain the first Monday of April, May, June, and I believe July. But August and September, it's going to be like the second or the third Monday.
You got you.
Yeah, but I'm going to I'll post those things out. But these first 4 months is going to be on the first Monday of each month. And we're trying to, would have had those last 2, but it was booked on the first Monday. But I'm trying to get a steady schedule of where people automatically know, hey, it's always the first Monday of every month. But
and this is for anybody.
This is for anybody.
Anybody, business owner, regular lay people. I encourage pastors, churches, especially parents to come to understand a lot about what's going on with their children. If the children have any interaction with the law, I would encourage school teachers to come, mental health counselors to come, anybody who wants to come and get a little legal advice, not advice, but some legal information about the law, to come to this clinic the first Monday in April at the library upstairs. And so
it'll be at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. It's at 6 o'clock in the evening, give you an opportunity to get home, rest, come, and just listen to Willie. And it's going to be a Q&A. And I think the Q&As are extra special because you get an opportunity to ask a judge and a lawyer, a guy with over 20 years experience in both questions about questions you might have. But we're getting close to the end. I always ask 3 questions, and everybody comes on here, and it's probably what gets the most attention. The first question is, what do you think the state of black love is?
Well,
briefly, because we got 2 more questions, and they loaded now.
The state of black love. Well, it depends on the context.
The context is, it's so hard for, seems like it's so hard for black women and black men to get together to love that eventually ends up in marriage. And it seems like there's so much tension between the 2 groups, the gender war between African American men, African American women. They can't get together. So what do you think the state of it is? What do you think the cause, the problems? We look at the symptoms because we can't get along. Nobody seems to be able to find love. So what do you think? Cause you ain't got to give a detail.
Well, I found love, so I'm
so he out of that. You found love.
Yeah, so I can't necessarily agree that they can't. I was able to, and I'm very happy in my relationship.
Yeah.
And thankful for it. But all I can tell people, when it comes to the state of black, I don't know. I don't have an answer for them. That's for them. I just know it worked for me.
It works for you.
Yeah.
You found what works for you, and you got in. Second question is this, that I always ask as people, is the state of the black church. What's the state? What do you think the state of the black church is?
Well, I think the black church has been what the black church has always been.
Okay.
I don't see, I think that it is, it has become more branding.
Branding. And I agree 100%.
Yeah, than anything than it has in the past. But overall, I think they're the same, with the exception, like I say, it's become more of a brand thing.
Branding and more commercial now.
Yeah,
than it's ever been.
Yes.
Yeah. And what do you think about the state of black preaching?
Black preaching? Well,
as much as you've been able to hear.
Yeah. Well, everybody's a preacher now.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say. When I was growing up, we've always had churches, but now you got a church on every corner.
Yeah.
And they'll turn a gas station into a church now.
Yeah.
So, and everybody, I've said this before that we have individuals, no one wants to be in the gallery. Everybody wants to be in the pulpit. And that's the reason why we have so many churches now. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that they're not needed.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that.
And that's not what you're saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's not needed, but we do have a lot of people who are pastoring. So I see more of that.
Yeah.
Now I see more of that now than I did in years past in my upbringing.
Yeah, and you always got to consider Scripture. It says that many are called but few are chosen. We've thrown that principle out the window. Now everybody is called and chosen. That's not true. Many are called, but only few are chosen to be elevated in these positions of authority, to be over people, to be the mediums in which God speaks His word through, to give an understanding to people. But now anybody can do it, and when you open it up to anybody, you dilute the quality. I don't care what anybody say. Now I'm controversial, and I'll say things other people won't say. But when you open it up to everybody, you dilute the quality of people that you now have doing it. And so when it's exclusive, you filter out people who are not really serious and in it for the wrong reasons. But anyway, the state of the black church. And so what do you think about the state of black music in the church?
Well, I'm a little old school when it comes to the black music. I like just the old school music.
Yeah.
When I was coming up, I remember when it was just piano.
Yeah.
And then we got an organ.
Yeah.
And then a drum came.
Yeah.
But I like it when it was just a piano.
Me too.
Me too. But now it's like a concert in some churches.
Yeah.
It's a concert going on. I mean,
nothing wrong with it. It's just not what I
love great music and singing in the church, and I rather, but I don't like the concert feel.
Yeah.
Performance two at a time. Like you just said, it's not that something's wrong with it. It's just not what I favor.
Yeah.
When it comes to church. A piano is enough for me, and I'm fine with the organ and the drum. But I'd rather I'd rather the music and the singing just be what I grew up on.
Yeah.
And that has changed a lot.
Yeah.
But some churches still have that.
Yeah.
But some churches it has changed a lot.
Last question. The internet, digital media, positive or negative effect on our community specifically? Negative. You want Claire to expand?
Well, it's a great tool when used properly.
Yeah.
When properly monitored.
Yeah.
However, but I don't think it's mostly being used properly, and I definitely don't believe that it's being properly monitored.
Right.
So,
gotcha.
And those are my issues with it. It can be a great educational resource,
yeah,
but you'll probably find that it's used less than that.
Yeah.
As an educational resource. If our kids use it as an educational resource, they all should be making A's and B's.
Absolutely.
But they're not using it. There's nothing on the internet that you can't go learn and teach yourself these days. So it takes away a lot of excuses not knowing the answers to questions or not knowing how to do things. Information is there. So it could definitely should be our greatest asset, but I think it kind of works against us because we're using it for TikTok, Instagram, and other social media sites that take away, putting a lot of negative things in our mind and not a lot of good things in it.
So as a lawyer, this is what I do want to cover, and I wish I would part time a little more time, but people don't realize the legal liability that they have when they post on social media. That you cannot just post on social media. It is a network where you can express your opinions and your beliefs and your ideas, but there are some limits in it.
Well, you can't go on social media and harass people.
Right.
And a lot of people use it for bullying and harassment and things of that nature of other individuals. We need to be careful about doing that. Stuff lasts forever.
Yeah.
And
you can't just say anything that's untrue about a person.
No, I mean, you can't go and that's what I mean by harassment and bullying. You just can't go on there and lie.
Right.
I mean, the same thing that I can tell you tell someone else about you, that's untruthful, that you could be sued for slander or libel, defamation of character. The internet just makes it proof.
Proof. You say something, it's in right now.
Yeah, it stays there. You can't say I didn't say it.
Right.
You know, it's there. It's on the internet. It's the proof of the defamation, slander, and libel that's been in existence for years.
Right.
Even before the internet, those defamation has was already something that you could be sued upon.
Yeah.
50 years ago.
Yeah.
That was in existence. Well, now, but then you just have to prove those things to put it together. Well, now all you have to do is print screen. Print screen. So that's what it has done.
So people need to be careful what they say that ain't true or slanderous or it causes harm to somebody's reputation.
Cause some harm to someone's reputation or their business.
Or their business. So you just can't say anything. It's the difference between a review and then saying something inflammatory or slanderous.
You can state your opinion on some things.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But if you state something for a matter of a fact, it better be true.
Yeah.
Because you can be sued on. Or if you're posting stuff just to harass an individual.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You're just posting stuff to harass an individual, trying to cause harm to them, threatening.
Yeah.
You got some people who post stuff. I mean, people do that. They post on the internet. When I see you, I'm going to do ABC to you. Threats, and people.
And that's against the law.
That's against it. It's always been unlawful to make threats against someone.
Yeah.
But again, the internet, all it is proof of the act.
Yeah.
So the internet didn't bring any, what I would like to say, anything new.
Yeah.
It just brought in the proof of it.
Yeah.
And it allowed it to be viewed by more and more people.
Yeah.
Right, where if I wanted to say something about Johnny, I can go over here to Tim and tell Tim, but if I wanted it to really get out there, I'd go and tell Tim, and I'd go and tell this person.
Yeah.
Well, the internet allowed for it to be told to thousands of people simultaneously.
Yeah.
At one time. I ain't got to tell it at one time.
Yeah.
So it allowed for that. So it allowed that message to go further. It allowed that message to be repeated over and over and over again, depending on how many times people share it.
Yeah.
Tell somebody share it. There's another group it goes to, which makes it more dangerous and which makes it more problematic to someone.
And it has a greater reach.
It has a greater reach.
It can damage your reputation because more people are on social media than they are in clubhouses, churches, and neighborhoods now, and it really has reached. Judge Allen, I appreciate you coming. Attorney Allen, community activist, his influence, his reach is into our community from a positive perspective is so far reaching. He is a very good judge with a judicial temperament and very compassionate in what he does. We sit there and watch him, and we are friends, and he does an excellent job from the bench. If you ever need legal counsel, reach out to him. If you come before him, you're going to get a fair judge who has really been able to preserve a reputation that he is compassionate. And the legal clinics, make sure you attend these legal clinics. You can reach out to also Aaron Washington, that also is helping and co-sponsoring these legal clinics with you, or reach out to myself, whatever we can do. But we want people to come to these legal clinics. Judge Allen, thank you for coming. I appreciate you, man, and looking forward to this legal clinic, and thank you for being a part of this.